right, welcome back to World's Strongest Opinions. With us today on episode 27 is CJ, the Giant Slayer Krause. Lots of accolades to mention. I'll just mention a few, though. American deadlift record holder under 80 kilograms. Of course, podium at Clash of under 80s last year. OSG finalist. Couple of appearances at the Arnold. A lot going on. Welcome to the show, CJ. How are you doing today, man?
I appreciate it. Yeah, I'm doing great. The weather out here in sunny Colorado today, so it's pretty good.
That's why I'm pimping the it's old school.
Yeah, the classic. The classic.
The classic. There you go. That's awesome, man. Sporting the classics. Yeah, man. So you got a lot of shows coming up. We were kind of talking right beforehand. The next big one is Kaos Classic in the UK. Luke Davies sponsoring. Luke Davies is one of our favorite guests. How's prep going, man? I mean, you were saying that you're just kind of in the beginning of it.
Yeah, I just started my week 2 of my 16-week prep, pretty much what I've decided to really hone in. I took a really good off season for the first time in my career to kind of put on weight to be a 90. As most people know, I'm usually competing in the 80s. So going up a weight class, and I want to do it the right way, especially this high caliber of a show. So I wanted to make sure I put on some solid weight, get all my injuries healed, because at the end of last season, I ended up dislocating my knee and tearing some muscles in my calf and a bunch of little stuff. So that's all healed up now. And I had a good off season, just getting bad at weaknesses. Getting good at weaknesses, And then, week 2 of prep went well. I'm hitting numbers already and ready to keep going up.
Yeah, man, you're looking strong, dude. I don't think probably the strongest you've ever been at this point at time, right? And that's always the goal, of course, but
yeah, I would say definitely it's the strongest statically I've ever been, because going through those injuries last year in the offseason, me and Gabe Pena, who's my coach, really talked about working on those weaknesses, which were overhead's been I've never been bad at it. I've hit 300 in competition, things like that, but I need to do it consistently. So focusing on strict press and making sure it's a consistent thing. And now I can hit 300 almost any training down a log, even without thinking. And we worked a lot with my Viper press because I couldn't use my knees at all or my calf a good chunk of prep. So doing that one motion was very helpful for that. And then of course my deadlift has always been there. It's been growing. Goal is to get 800 soon. That's what I want to happen very soon. Pushing for that. And then worked on a lot of just stamina and things like that. So yeah, I'm sitting more at my natural body weight with a little bit extra. And yeah, I'm just feeling the strongest I've ever been, and more to go.
What's your natural body weight?
Roughly 195 to 205 is kind of what I walk around at. If I'm just not paying attention, just doing my normal eating habits, and that's what I normally sit at. For those of you that know, 80 kilograms is about 176. So that's what I usually compete at. So all last year, I was eating a calorie deficit for a good chunk of it. Oof. And then this off season, I kind of went to a calorie surplus. Peaked out at about 218, 220, and now I'm probably roughly 208, 210. So,
nice. Do you feel better, heavier, or
to a certain degree?
Obviously, I think leverages change. That was always my experience. Going up and down weight for under 105 is, for me specifically, the higher my body weight went up, the more my press went up, but my deadlift would always suffer because I always kind of blamed it on leverages for the lack of better reasons for it.
Oh no, for sure. Leverages can change a lot. That's why I definitely, when I was doing putting the weight on, was very slow add-on with that. So I didn't lose my leverages because deadlift's one of my better events. So it's one of those things I didn't want to lose on the way up to the class, because if I blow it up after a show, I can definitely get too much gut and it gets in the way and I can't sit in the position properly. I used to know exactly what weight I deadlifted best at, which is 195. So whenever it was a big deadlift in a show, I would refeed up to that weight after I made weight. Now I put on enough strength and my body size is good. Now I think 205 to 210 is pretty much the exact same what 195 used to be. Same leverages, same strength. Well, not same, stronger, but comparatively on that one. So now I can sit a little bit heavier on that and not lose my leverages, so I can get a little more strength out of it. So I think slow gaining really helped me on that. But yeah, definitely leverages can change. And then having this exercise my press has been skyrocketing. So
yeah, dude, that's what I saw, man. I mean, looking at your social media, just crushing 300. Where you said it used to be last year about this time was like your 1 rep max, right? And now you're just smoking it on a daily basis.
Not on log. Last year, my log max was maybe like 275, 280.
Oh wow! So huge improvement.
Yeah, my axle max was about 300 about a year ago. And my log max was about 280. We recently retested my log max when I got fully cleared for my legs, and like I barely hit 300. Like it was like a fight, and I was like walking with it, and it was unstable, and just hammering it and hammering it. Now 300 is working weight. Like I'm hitting it for singles. I feel like I can hit it for a double if we ever need to test it. But so I'm not worried about 300 pounds anymore. It's just something that's a working weight every single day. I know I can hit it, which I think it's huge for me, especially someone that's not known for pressing.
Yeah. Heck yeah, man. It's good to hear, dude. It's good to see, like, I follow you and watching the progress has been really, really great, man.
Appreciate that.
It's been substantial. It's crazy though. The stacked class that's going in is like watching all of you do your presses and everything. I'm like, it's going to be a wild show.
Yeah, max log is a big thing on that one. And they want to break the world record. I won't be breaking the 90 kilogram world record, but I think I'm going to be in contention of upper middle pack if I keep progressing the way I am, which is the goal. It's again, my game's always consistency. We've seen that a lot throughout my career in the sport. And I think if I keep focusing on this, it's a way I can keep consistent with that event, because I never want to lose points where I don't have to.
That makes sense. And when you talking about like points and everything, we know, of course, like you're gunning for first. So who would you say would take second and third?
That could be a long list of guys. So
okay, top 4 people. Top
4 people. Okay. I'm gonna say
you got to do more than top 4 in this field. I mean, top 4 is like.
Me, someone else. I could list. Cam Peters is someone that always comes to mind. I've had a good battle with him head to head, and I'm excited. I saw what he did at OSG, and barring injury, I think he could have won that show. Speaking of OSG, we got to talk about someone's been calling me out on social media, Tyler Davis. He's a great competitor. I respect him. I still don't think there's anything he can best me at, like consistently across the whole show once I'm at full peak. So we'll see how that goes with that one. So I'm like under the radar guy. I mean, we can also talk Shane German coming out of retirement, coming down to the 90s class. I think he pressed over almost 400 pounds. Quote me if I'm wrong, like maybe more. I don't even know. Yeah. That's someone that looking forward to that one. I mean, wild card, I would say Andrew Pepiot, who I think just not a lot of people know about him because he's a quiet kind of guy, but he had a killer time on the qualifiers. I think he's consistent with all of that. That's just like 4 off the top of my head.
He's been around for a long time, and he's got a lot of good experience. He's I don't know if he could be considered one of the old guys yet, but he's got old guy experience.
And then there's some I'll list 2 more just to have 2 more. Dan Benson and Gav McTavier are 2 other guys that I think could put on a good show depending on their weaker events. Like depending how well Gav can get his press to catch up with his, because he's again world record deadlift holder. Yep. So it's something to be, Dan Benson's right there, former world record deadlift holder. So the 2 guys that can pull. It just depends what the other events kind of fall into place with all of that. So yeah, I mean, I could keep listing names. We just know how stacked the show is.
Yeah, I'm looking at the lineup, and it's really hard to pick people out.
Yeah,
and everything. And it's nice you called out Tyler because he's going to be on the show on the 25th.
24th.
Tentatively.
24th, I think. Yeah.
Nice.
One of those days.
Yeah.
Great. I can't wait to hear
Tuesday.
Yeah. So I can't wait to hear what he said about me.
Dude, there's a lot of good names. Like Nick O'Hare, when he's on, man.
Yeah. I love Nick.
Tyler Young cutting down. I mean, which to me,
that's a wild one.
That's probably not much of a cut for Tyler, right?
Oh.
It's not though. It's like his natural body weight. Like he's like 215 to 218. He's just gonna diet properly.
Yeah.
Both the guys
he's never had a cut for under 105. So.
Oh, nice.
But he's been in 80s before. He's been in 90s before.
These are things that he started
in 80s. Yep. Started in the 80s.
Oh, did he?
Okay. 80s.
I thought he started in the 90s.
Yeah.
But okay.
No, yeah. So he's been all the way down to that class. So he's kind of like one of those guys. I'm not like he's gonna do amazing things on the static events. The thing is, like, for those two guys, they could prove me wrong. Like anybody in this class would be wrong. I think there's just glaring events that they might not be able to do as well on. Like Tyler having the yoke to double sandbag, right?
Right.
How much time is he going to lose on having to get that bag higher for the yoke or things like that, or taking time to do things like that? And then Nick O'Hare, can he get his grip? I love Nick, but like his grip's always been his Achilles heel.
Yeah.
And there's a heavy farmers, 300 a hand, and there's 3 picks. So like I think they can do it by all means, but I think those weaknesses and the way the show is like made up kind of like not take them out of contention by any means. They have to perform on those events to make it happen.
Absolutely. Well, I think that kind of boils down to, I mean, everybody, right, this is the creme de la creme of the under 90s from around the world. The reality is, it's just being there. Everybody's a contender, right? And unfortunately, somebody has to take last, somebody will take first, and there's going to be a mix up in between. But I mean, everybody just getting that far to that level is an achievement in and of itself. What do you think about John Hack making the move? I don't know if it's just temporary to see how it goes for him, but I mean, he's hands down the strongest deadlifter in this class.
Oh, of course, by far. But I think, again, it's definitely a celebrity invite. He's done a couple of local strongman shows, done some good things. I'm excited to go against him to see how he does. I've seen his training. I think there's a lot to be desired and carryover. And I've seen in my career, like powerlifters, there's 4 moving events we have essentially. That's where it becomes the problem for the powerlifter in that one. Because the second you're making change their plane of motion, they're most likely going to walk like there's cement in their shoes. And it's an axle bar. Like, that's hard to keep consistent. That bar path is different. There's no slack to pull out. Right. Is he an insane puller? Yes, by far on that. I'm not trying to take anything away from him. I've seen him repping like 600 plus pounds, 700 pounds, like awesome on that one. But there's a lot of guys that can do that in this class. And is he going to win the deadlift? Maybe. Like, he'll be up there for sure. But then his log, for a max log, I know I can hit 320 right now, and he's missed it recently.
Yeah.
Is he statically strong enough to do it? Yes. But is there nuances to this sport that are completely different than powerlifting? Yes. So can he put it together in time? Because he's fighting the clock.
Right.
Because he has all the strength. But does he have the athleticism and the nuances that we have of years of doing this? That's what we need to see with John Hack. So I'm really excited to go against him. But as someone that's a strongman whose whole athletic career at this level, I'm not going to let him beat me. So
that's the right attitude.
Yeah. And that's a good point about the axle and stuff, because that does change like the plane of motion. And if you're used to like strongman deadlifts are different, because like recently I hadn't been training like with straps at all, and getting like you can't get your air at the top and then strap in, because like that's just way too much time. And as someone who likes to get a full brace and just go down and just pick it up, like it's a completely different movement, having to like try to like awkwardly get into place while your belt's like sucking the life out of you. So it'll be interesting to see those things carry over.
Oh, for sure.
But the difference there.
Whenever we talk about powerlifters, and this is a bad example because they're like 2 different body types and weight classes, is Brian Siders. Brian Siders always comes to mind when I think of sort of the celebrity powerlifter invite to strongman. I don't know if you guys have seen those back in like the Arnold, and he's in World's Strongest Man 1 or 2 years. And the lack of, like, Brian Siders was an amazing powerlifter, right? I mean, incredibly powerful, moving a lot of weight. I'm pretty sure he was a world record holder at one time. 0 athleticism. He couldn't move. Exactly like what you were saying. As soon as he had to move and run, you could tell he'd spend his entire life not doing anything of the sort, right? And that could definitely be the Achilles heel of those static strength athletes.
Yeah, because like I said, there's 2 static events. We have 4 events that have some kind of moving involved in it. So, and one of the static events, it requires a special kind of clean, the log. So it's just one of those things that, like, again, he's got all the strength to prove me wrong, but I just don't see it. And
And you're right. I mean, do you ever see the video of Dmitry Klokov? Like, it was like the first time he ever touched a log. And this was back when he was still like push pressing 495, like it was a joke, right? I want to say he did like a 120 kilogram log, and like he could barely press it because it was so out of the groove. He didn't understand the mechanics of it.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, it kind of boils down to like, if being strong and being efficient doesn't mean much if you haven't trained with the specific implements, don't have a lot of time with it.
Yeah. And for sure, I give him all the credit in the world. He is training it. I see him on his Instagram posting about it, working with people, talking to people. So I give him credit. He's taking this serious. So I'm not like upset he's like just walking in thinking he's going to win the whole thing. He is training it, but it's just like, again, he's battling the clock at this point. Well, how much, like, we've done this for years. How much strongman can you like hone in for 6 events in one day with minimal rest in 16 weeks?
Not much. I mean, I'll tell you what, when I was training for Clash or SCL Worlds, where there was, between 10 and 12 events, I just didn't train half of them. I was good enough where I didn't need to. Right? Let me rephrase that. I knew the events well enough that I didn't need to hammer the form on them. I just needed to be strong, right? And so you're right. I mean, being a top-level strongman athlete requires a bit of expertise to where you don't – because you don't want to have to focus on that many events going into a show. It's going to be detrimental to your weaknesses, right?
Yep, for sure. And that's kind of like why we developed so many years under our belts and why we did so many shows early on and trying to figure out events, doing all these things. That's why like competing is almost the most important thing in strongman. Like, not just don't pick a show you're going to win. Pick a show that's going to challenge you and keep getting challenged and work your way up. Like, I can't tell you how many times in my first few years of doing strongman, I was just trying not to get last.
Yeah.
That was like the biggest thing. I was like, let's just try not to get last and figure out this new thing that I've never done before. And that was happening. It took me like 4 years to be decent enough to qualify for my first nationals.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, likewise. I think, and we preach that on this show a lot is, if you need to win, you're in the wrong sport. I mean, let me kind of rephrase that again too. If you have any aspirations to go far in the sport, if you can't compete without losing, like, you're in the wrong sport. Because you got to lose to learn to win, right? And strongman, there's so much to learn. Like you said, I tell people that are just entering the sport this all the time. Like, spend some time challenging yourself, going into the harder classes. Don't go and take the easy road, right? Compete against people who are better than you. That's how you learn to be better, right? That's the demonstration of what you need to do to be at that level.
Yeah, I did a total of, I think, 3 total novice shows, and then I jumped right into the open. Like, and I did 3 of them in the first, like, I think it was like 6 to 8 months, and I was like, okay. And then I spent years getting my ass kicked.
Yeah.
Like, but I think it's what makes you better. You don't just like, okay, cool, I got a trophy, but like, it's a hollow trophy to me. I prefer more my like accolades of like not getting first all the time. Something like making the finals of OSG twice is like really important to me, more than like certain wins I've had at medium level shows or things like that. So
being top 10 in a world competition is underrated, in my opinion. Strongman is like, it's about the glorification of the strongest man, right? And rightfully so, that person gets all the, the glory and the accolades. But being top 10 in the world in your class is a huge, huge achievement in and of itself. Because getting that one opportunity to get on the podium, right? That doesn't happen for very many people.
Yeah.
Year after year, right? They may have a big peak in their career and win a few national titles or world titles, but it almost always wanes, right? And on occasion they might come back, but
yeah, it's why I say I'd rather have like a JF Caron career than even an Eddie Hall career. And in my mind, you know what I mean? I think that's one of those things. Like, he was always making the finals. He was always in contention. He won Canada Strongman like 20 something times, like just like crazy number of competitions, crazy number of things. That's someone that like was about it. That's someone I respect a lot. That's kind of my mindset of it too, is just like, I'd rather be consistent, and the more opportunities I have, it means how good I actually was. I can almost think like I can like get a fluke and if it's the perfect event, it's the perfect day, it's built for them, awesome.
Yep.
But can you do it again? Can you be in contention every time? Can you walk into any show and be like, okay, that guy I know is going to be a challenge at every show versus like, okay, he got a W, but like then he missed here, missed there, you know. So
yeah. For the vast majority of people, they will not win more than once, right? At the world level. The vast majority. You've got a few examples, right? In World's Strongest Man, right? Shaw and Pujanowski, and of course Big Z. You know, in the 105s, well, we got Andrew Clayton, who's done it a couple of times, right?
Yep.
He's won some big shows. Tyler Davis had a good streak, I think, last year. Won some big shows. But yeah, I mean, top 10 is nothing to shake a stick at.
Yeah, for sure.
Also, I'm going to come back and I'm going to quote the Kurgan man when you said Eddie Hall. Remember the Kurgan said that it's better to burn out than to fade away.
I mean, that is a choice.
Highlander for the win.
No, I think that's a good point though, to like really challenge yourself, because like Darren said it before on the show of like you'd much rather be the weakest strong man than to be the strongest weak man. And a lot of people like they'll only do it if they can come out on top, and that's like congratulations, you compete against people who weren't really that strong of competition. Whereas like I like when people have that approach of like they want to compete against like you or CJ Pierce. Is CJ Pierce going to do this one, or is he sitting out?
He is not. He is sitting this one out. Like I coach him, so I talk with him a lot.
Oh,
He's opting out. That's the other things he wants to do in his personal life. So unfortunately, he will not be there. But I think he's going to be at the PSL 90s to try to defend his. Yeah, from what I've heard from him recently. So he's a big focus this year, honestly, to talk about him. He wants to go 105s soon. He's ready to take that next step up, and he's been trying to push himself, especially like I coach primarily his deadlift, which has been, I think we put on like 70 pounds in the past year to his deadlift. Just I mean, again, I the way I say it is I unlocked his potential because his positioning was wrong for the most part, and then I correlated the growth up on top of that one. I think the first 30 to 40 pounds just him not in the right positioning for it. But yeah, he's tired of cutting. He doesn't like it. He sits like 215 to 220, and he's starting to creep up a little more. He's just getting so strong and big. Yeah. So I think 105s will be very soon for him, and he's got the pressing power. His deadlift's getting there, and yeah. So I think he's someone to watch out for in the upcoming years in the 105 class for that one. So spoiler alert on that, but I think he's got one or two more 90 shows in him.
And that's the natural progression for strongman. At least, I mean, again, something that I frequently, the natural progression should be once you start dominating a certain weight class, you should move up, right? It's just like novice. If you win, you're supposed to move into amateur, right? If you win 90s or you whatever, I'm kind of saying this a little bit arbitrarily because some of the weight classes are relatively new in the lifetime of the sport. But the idea was back when there was only two weight classes. There was under 105 and there was opens. Under 105 was meant to just be a stepping stone into the opens, right? Once you start doing well there, you're supposed to go up. And it's always nice to see, from my perspective anyway, when people like Nicholas Canby, right? I mean, he was dominating under 105s. There's no point in continuing to dominate when there's a whole other, world of athletes out there to challenge yourself against.
Yep, for sure. And it's like one of those things. It's like it's a natural right. As you get stronger, you're gonna get bigger, and that's the thing. The cuts are gonna get even tougher. And this is something I've been dealing with. It's like, when's my last 80 show? Like maybe OSG this year is my last 80 show. Who knows how my body's gonna react to a cut back down to 80s? Because like I'm getting stronger. That's the thing. You just eventually we're gonna outgrow a class, and that's okay. But it's just something that like we have to decide as athletes. When's that point?
Yeah. Yeah,
and this year's going to be a great test for me, doing mostly 90 shows, 2 big 90 shows I'm doing. And then I plan on doing OSG as an 80, and maybe we'll see if that's my last one or if I have another cut in me, or I would like another crack at the 80s world record. So maybe I'll do one more after that. Who knows?
So when you cut, I mean, what did you say? You're like 208 right now?
Just about, yeah.
208 pounds. And I mean, cutting down to 176, I mean, that's a 32 pound cut. Are you going to do that all water, or do you actually diet?
Oh, no, I diet down. I spend about 10 weeks of a diet down, ideally, is my goal on that one, to slowly get it down to a good progression. I'm not losing strength on the way. So when I do a cut, it's usually I try to get down to like mid 190s to low 190s and lean. I'm very lean when I get to that point, holding as much muscle as possible. And then the water seems to come off very quickly. For the most part. Sometimes it's a little tougher than others, but I think if I'm like 194 when I start my water load, I'm not worried about getting to 176. The way cutting works is just the preparation. That's more about the 8 to 10 weeks before you do the water load than it is even the week of the water load. On top of that one, am I an extreme case? Yes, I'm one. But that's why, again, when's my last cut going to be? Because eventually I'm just holding myself back my peak strength. But usually it's about mid 190s is what I try to get down to, and then water the rest.
Yeah. What do you think about water cuts? So I've done a lot myself. And I often hear other athletes, weight class athletes, say that water cutting is hard. And I was kind of shaking my head at that. And I'm like, it's hard when you start doing it, like the first few times. But by the time you're like an elite athlete, it shouldn't be hard anymore. And if you miss it, like I kind of feel that if you're missing a weight cut at that level, like you're not ready to be at that level. It should be it's uncomfortable by all means, right? But it should not be the hardest thing you do going into a competition, and you should not be missing a weight cut when you're at an elite level.
Again, I think it just goes back to what was your preparation? How lean did you get beforehand? What was the whole spectrum? Like, how well do you know your body on that one too? Like, I know it takes me roughly about now. It used to take me 7 weeks. Now it starts taking me 8 weeks. Now it takes me 10 weeks approximately to have a super clean, easy cut with dieting down to the right percentage of body fat, the right water load. Everything's in place. It takes me roughly from start of diet to show day. I need usually 9 to 10 weeks, and I know I will make weight on the dot. It's going to be uncomfortable. As Derek Owens has told me, in the fact you look like death, like my eyes are sunken in, my cheekbones are down, but I don't feel bad anymore. Mentally, I'm there. As long as I don't lose my head, I'm there. Every cut is different, and different like hormonal reactions do happen. Those are all one-off shots that could affect things as well. That I usually don't hold too much against athletes, but a lot of time it's like, what did you do during your preparation in the 8 weeks before you even started drinking your first 2 gallons of water? It's really what sets you up.
Yeah, I think consistency. I mean, you're right. And kind of like what I was saying is the beginning, when you first start, you're learning what your body reacts to. You learn what works best for you, because some people like to do, full immersion or sauna suit. People like doing water loads, right? There's various ways of doing that. And with experience, you dial in what works well for you. And I think it boils down to consistency, right? And to be an elite athlete, I think you have to be really consistent. You have to be very mindful of all of those factors that go into your weight, your water cut specifically. But yeah, I've never thought that it was the last probably 5 years. I mean, the leaner you get, the easier it is. But yeah, it just got easier and easier and easier and easier to where it was just like.
It just depends on percentages as well, too. Like, I tell people you earn your percentages. Like, when I coach an athlete on their cuts, I start them off. I'm like, you're doing under 5%. We got to get dieted down to under 5%. You're going to earn your first water cut of like 3 to 4%. And then we see how you react. Cool, you were able to perform. You did well. You earn another percent or two, depending on how you perform, how you did well. You earn. And I really don't like coaching athletes over the 10% mark on that one. At that point, you need to know everything about your body. Like, I've done 12% cuts.
Yeah.
Those suck on that one. Like, it's just one of those things, but like, you have to know how to refeed as well. So like I said, I feel like the way I coach my athlete, you earn the percentage you're allowed to cut. And that's how it goes, the progression of it on that one. So if you want to be the biggest guy in the class, cool. You better have done all the steps to be able to make the weight to be the biggest guy in the class and make your refeed proper, so you're not walking out there overly bloated. That's all. Yeah. But again, at this level, you should know that.
Absolutely. Yeah, that was my original point. It's always funny to me, like you go into these big shows and people are still complaining about the weight cuts. It's like, yeah, we're all suffering, right? It sucks, but like, this should not be the hardest thing you do this weekend. If you are again, you've planned and everything, but being at that level, you shouldn't be at that level if you haven't figured that out yet. But when it comes to refeed, what's your kind of favorite protocol?
Oh, I am meticulous about my refeed. I am like the first hour, I'm like letting my stomach acid settle. I'm just taking like a protein shake with some like creatine and sodium and things like that, letting the stomach acid settle. About an hour in, I start having like rice cakes and jam just to get started in the process. If I'm having an IV, that's when I start having the eating as well at that point, maybe a bagel a little bit there. And then the rest of the day, I try to get like my go-to big meal is sushi because easy digestible protein, easy digestible carbs, some simple things like that. Salt everything as I'm going through, drinking water, but not chugging. And then usually it's about a meal every hour, hour and a half. And then I kind of monitor my weight throughout the day based on the goal of the show as well. Like if I know press is going to be a bigger problem, I try to put on a little bit extra weight to get closer to like that 200, 205 mark. If I know I'm going to be focusing on the deadlift, I make sure I stop at like 195 to 198. So I'm really meticulous in checking my weight throughout the day to know exactly what's going on with me. And then just monitoring my right level. So it's really just like a very finite, and what's the goal of the show?
Yeah, absolutely. I just found a good monitor for when I'm getting like too bloated as I can't close my hands.
Yeah. When the finger starts
eat too much salt and too many simple carbohydrates, I'm like, oh, we might want to cut back.
Yeah, I can't grab a farmer's handle. There's a problem. My ankles usually tell me. I'm like, oh, they're starting to swell. That's where I slow down. Cool.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Well, that makes sense to get it down to science, because like whenever you hear about people missing weight cuts, I'm like, that must be a bummer. To like miss a weight cut by a few pounds, like, because at that point you have to compete heavier, and you're still like in the middle of a weird water cut.
Or you don't compete at some of these shows now. If you make the cut, you're done. There's no other weight classes to go to.
Yeah, Pro Strongman League, you miss a cut, you're not competing that day. There's no class to go up to. But that's why it's a pro level show. Your first job as a pro in a weight class sport is to make weight. That is the first thing you do. That's if you want to call yourself a pro, have the opportunity to earn a paycheck, you got to step on that scale. Period. So.
No, I think that's super important. And I think getting it down to a science so you're not doing like painful or reckless things. Because when I hear about people doing like super diuretics and doing like 15 to 20% body cut weights, you're like, sounds
How are you going to perform? How are you going to perform though? Like the idea of that, and especially with like high diuretics, it's just like, cool, you made the weight, now you can't perform. So it's like, there's a balance to all of it, understanding all of that. It's actually a science. Also, if you're making that big of a cut, you're not lean enough. Sorry, it's just there's no way you are that much body fat, or you're in the next class. That just is what it is. If you're doing like 20%, you're not in the right class, and obviously not before.
It gets pretty unsafe, like you said. I mean, over 15% starts getting into like a pretty big safety issue, in my opinion. There's nothing in strongman worth that risk.
Unfortunately, not. But like even then, like at the same time, like. You're the guy that made weight barely on the scale, and you can't feed up properly, and you try to press and you're hitting 30 pounds under what you did in training. Like what does that prove and things like that? Like, I don't know. I agree. I've done some bigger cuts, like 12%, like I said, but I didn't start there. I started at like 5, 4. And you should only be doing cuts like that if you're at a high level. You never should be close to a 10% cut unless it's for like a world record attempt, a world's level show, or you're getting a paycheck. Those are the 3 reasons to do like that high of a cut. Besides that, like amateur athletes, guys, just if it's over 5%, you didn't diet well enough, and maybe you should just do the next class and challenge yourself. It's just one of those things. And then get your diet down. Take it as a learning experience. If you have to go to extreme measures to do, the show down the street, maybe there's other factors you should be considering, or maybe you're not taking it serious enough the level you want to be at. And it's okay to not take the sport as serious as we do. It's okay to be a hobbyist in this. But if you're going to be a hobbyist, don't do things reckless. And if you're going to go to the elite level, earn your way up there. Because you hear about all of us doing these giant cuts. You hear about it and like, oh, they're doing it all the time, so why can't I do it? Are you factoring in like how many we've done? Understanding our bodies. The body fat we're at right now on top of it. The weeks of prep we don't talk about, because the only time we complain during a prep is the last week when we're having to make weight. We're not complaining about eating the rice and and veggies and meat the whole time. That's the easy part.
Yeah.
The hard, like, it's just one of those things. Think about that on the way up as well, because I think anybody can reach this level if they work hard enough and want it bad enough and make the proper sacrifices. But like, don't make the sacrifice like that early when you're in the learning phases.
Right.
That makes sense, because doing it for a small local show that maybe has like $150 cash prize for first place, you're like
or
jeopardizing
$0.
$0, and you're jeopardizing your health for like nothing and stuff. Like, I think it's important, because I think a lot of people kind of get too excited early on about it, and it's like, really, for the first few years you're just building strength. Like, you should only be focused on size and strength, like, unless you're like really concerned about like a certain like field or whatever. I think too many people worry about those like weight cuts and stuff at the beginning, and I'm like, you should maybe just focus on strength.
Well, I think people remember the people that came out of nowhere. They're like, oh, the amount of people that, like, Cam Peters, at least for example, last year, amazing athlete, first time doing OSG, nearly wins the whole show. He is the like 0.00001% of people that can do that, right? And he had a foundation before that as well. But the majority of people like myself, it took me almost 5 years to get my first national qualified for, right?
Yeah.
More people are closer to my timeline than his timeline, but they see this person, and it's okay not to be that freak of an athlete.
Yeah.
You just have to work harder. It's how it works.
Yeah. Because he has an insane drive. I mean, it's crazy to like work night shift, working on an oil rig all night, and then go to the gym at 7 a.m. when you just got off work. I'm like, there are very few people I know who will do like that 2-to-1 thing of like, he works all the time. And like, I don't think people always understand that. Of like,
I take nothing away from him, but the fact that he's 24 or 25 at this point and able to do this, like, there's a freak athlete in there that has this capability. On top of that, he works so hard to do that. It takes both. But again, the majority of people have to work that hard or close to it, or work, but they need more time because they just don't have those gifts. And again, he does the most with his gifts. That's awesome. But sometimes that's not your path, and that's okay. Don't try to rush your path.
And I think people don't always understand too, of like, there are certain, like, a lot of people I know who have been like freak athletes along the way. You have to realize, like, working in construction or working in an oil field for 5 to 10 years, like, that'll build strength without any sort of strength training and stuff. Like, there's a solid thing of like working all day if you take it seriously. There are some people who won't, but like,
I mean, I work in the oil field, and I mean, I put on some weight. The only thing is that from a weightlifting perspective, you need to constantly change the stimulus, right? Increase the stimulus, where eventually everything is just always the same out there, right? You'll gain quickly when you start, but then everything's just repetitive and same way.
I mean, it's a solid base, though.
It is. It's pretty.
Like, I wasn't saying it's going to get you to the world level.
Pretty decent base.
But that is an exceptional thing, and I think people kind of want to be that dark horse to appear, but it's for most people that's not going to happen. Like, you need to build up for years.
What's exceptional, I think, is being able to work a laborious job and then go and work out, and and I'm not taking anything away from it. It's easier to do in your 20s than mid 30s and 40s, but more power to him. I mean, the time is now if he's going to do it, and it is exceptional, right?
Yeah, it's not the rule. Everything.
Yeah,
so I think that I like that, the earn your way up and everything, because that really is like with cuts and everything. You don't start out right away like at your best and everything, or at like the most intense thing. But I think overall it's going to be a crazy class, though. I keep looking at this list and I'm like, I don't know what to think. Like, the longer I stare at this list and we talk, I'm like, for one, I love Cam because he's a friend and everything, but it's crazy to see him up there on that list. And when I found out he was 24, I was like, oh my God, like, that's crazy.
Blew my mind when I found that out too. I'm like, cool. Cool. You're going to be a problem for a long time if you can stay healthy.
Yeah. Like, whenever people send their email addresses and it ends with like a high 90 something, I'm like, oh, cool. You were born in 1998. Awesome.
You know, another person that probably I don't know if he's falling under the radar or not is Mario Silm.
Oh yeah,
he's a under 90 from Finland. Had the pleasure of meeting him a couple of times. I believe he's won 2 of the SCL under 90 World Championships. The dude is a crazy presser. He's definitely CJ Pierce level presser. I mean, he's really incredible.
Yeah,
that's awesome. Yeah,
I'm pretty excited.
I don't know much about him. Like I said, I listed people I know, and there's names I don't know on here. But again, I don't take any of this for granted. I don't think like it's going to be easy by any means. It's going to take my best day, and like that's another name. Cool. That's another reason why I want to focus on pressing so much, because there's so many good pressers. That's where I can lose points, and that's why I'm like, okay, that's something I got to keep focusing on. So yeah. Thank you for giving me more motivation.
Yeah, dude. I mean, you've got a lot of motivation there. By all means, that is a stacked class. So what's next after Chaos? You'd mentioned the PSL under 90s in September. Where's that going to be held at? You know,
I believe it's in Virginia. I can't remember where in Virginia. So that's the next show I'm doing. I actually opted out of the PSL 80s this year, mostly because, again, time it takes to water cut. And I'm doing Ohio Strongest as well. Because, again, I'm in my walking around weight. I can get to 90s in a week, less than a week. Sure. You know what I mean? Without trying. And I want to plan on doing the U90 and potentially U100 USS American deadlift records. And I want to go for the block press world record is my plan for Ohio Strongest.
Nice. What is it currently?
I believe it's somewhere in the 270 range, around there.
Okay.
Yeah, give or take.
Didn't oh man, I can't spit his name out right now. He trains at Titan Iron.
Ethan Atkins.
Yeah, Ethan Atkins. Yeah, thanks. Sorry.
Yep.
No,
you're good.
Space his name, but he went for it at Clash last year, did he not?
Yep. Yeah, and he missed it barely on that one. But I think I worked with him on his most recent cuts, and I think he just didn't do his cut properly, his refeed properly, and he's got a good shot at hitting again. Right now, Aaron Televerna is the current record holder for that event. Okay. And I think it's in my ballpark, especially holding this heavier weight, that I can hit that. Sure. So these are just things that's along the way. That's kind of a fun show. It's for charity. It was originally called the Clash for Nora. I don't know what it's going to be renamed to or things like that. But it's, again, for a great charity event. I'm excited to be a part of that. And then I opted out of the PSL 80s because it's right in the middle between PSL 90s and the record breaker Ohio Strongest. So I won't be doing the 80s Clash or PSL this year, but the 90s I will be competing there because I qualified for that when I won Clash in the UK. So taking the opportunity to do some more 90s stuff. So
yeah, I think that makes sense. That's exciting. And the block press, that's one of the first videos I ever saw of Darren was doing the block press Clash years ago, and I was like, that's a hard movement and everything. Yeah. Like that's like it's so impossibly awkward trying to clean it and get it up there. And especially if you try multiple attempts, I'm always impressed by the block press.
It's really hard too, and the weight is not like locked down and moving all over the place.
Yeah,
no, it's definitely a wonky
just
one.
Like sealed up with all the stuff in there. I'm like, a concrete block seems easier than that. Like,
yeah, for sure. That's why the weight isn't like you hear people hitting like over 300 logs and over 300 axles, and this one hasn't even reached 300 yet. So it's one of those things that like it's because it's so awkward in every shape and form. But that's why, again, I'm excited to attempt it. Am I going to hit it? We'll find out. I'm give it hell. That's what I do in everything I do.
You've been sitting here talking about winning a Kaos Classic this whole time, man. You gotta get the block press too. You gotta have the right mindset. You're going to do this.
Manifest it.
Manifest it. Exactly.
I'm gonna work. I'm gonna work for it. So if the opportunity is there, and I'll hit it. I just know it's got to take the right prep. Everything always takes the right prep in my mind.
Absolutely.
So,
yeah.
So, another kind of big thing that's coming up is the PSL under 64 women's World Championships coming to the Denver area on, I think it's June 17th, correct?
Yep, June 17th.
And CJ and myself are going to be the live commentators on the ADL live stream, which is pretty sweet. Pretty excited about that.
Yeah. we were messaging today. They got finalized today, and we're both pretty stoked about being the color commentators for that show. And I'm excited for this class. Like the U64 class is one of my favorite classes. I think they're pound for pound the strongest people on the planet. These women. So I cannot wait to see the performance they put on here in Denver. So I'm excited.
100%, man. And I mean, Denver, dude, we need more big shows here. And as a community, we need to be coming together and trying to facilitate getting these shows here. I mean, Denver's basically the middle of the continent. It's very accessible. Flights into here are typically cheap. We've got the infrastructure and everything to support it. A huge strongman community. I hope that this show, I mean, we had Clash on the Rockies and of course the under 80s here last year. So I hope it, with PSL now, I hope that it continues and grows. I know that they would love to have other shows here as well. Yeah.
I mean, we see with the Shaw Classic as well, that this is definitely can be a strongman big community. We have multiple gyms in the area. We have had, I mean, in the small area that we have of Denver, we've had 7 or 8 people total have been to OSG at one point or another, or been to at least the Clash, like different things, Yeah. We have Kim Scott, who's competing in the 64s from here in Denver when she got, I believe, second at nationals last year. So it's one of those things like in our small space, when you go to think about it, like how many gyms do we have and how many elite athletes do we have? It's kind of crazy to think about in the grand scheme of things when only X amount of people from around the world get invited to these things.
Yeah, absolutely. So, we've got a few nationals winners here too, I think. I don't know where Tyler Stickle got his pro card at though. I think he won nationals way back in like 2013. Man, I'm gonna have to contact Tyler because I
figure that out.
Really want to know. Because I think him and myself, I won USS, not SC nationals.
Yeah, I got a podium at nationals. Yeah, so I got third.
And then, Adam Geiger got second or third at nationals in 2019 or 20. Yeah. So we've got a lot of really elite athletes in this area. And of course, Jonathan Cotton up in Windsor, who competes overseas at SCL on the open circuit. Man, there's so many names.
The more we think about it, the more we keep listing. Yeah,
exactly, dude. So Denver's got we've got a lot of great strongman athletes, and like I said, a huge community to support these big shows, man. And I hope that we have a big turnout. I mean, I know I'm going to be spreading the word to get as many people out watching as possible, because that's how, to me, that's how we grow the sport, right? It's there's always kind of that controversy, like what is growing the sport mean? And some people think it's more athletes. I think it's more audience. We need the audience, right? Because the audience is where the ROI is for the sponsors, and to get money, and we need money to grow the sport, right? And to get the money, we need the audience, right?
Yeah, and I think that's the big thing, is creating spectacles, because again, to a normal person, we are beyond any strength that they can fathom doing. We walk into what here is a Vasa Fitness or like an LA Fitness, things like that. We're the strongest people in that gym, hands down, on most things. I'm not trying to be cocky, but it's like one of those things because it's just one of those things that even some the U64 women, they walk into a normal gym, they're out deadlifting most of those guys there at weighing under 140 pounds.
It's rare when you're at a Vasa to see anybody deadlifting 405, 4 plates. Yeah. Very, very rare. I don't know. I've been to one Lifetime Fitness. I don't think I saw anybody deadlifting more than 95 pounds.
and they kind of go into that, but people just don't know that these athletes exist a lot of the time, or that are even in the area. They would I'm sure you've experienced, you go to there and you deadlift a normal working set of a day, you get some people watching you and looking weird. Now it's what if we put that on a spectacle and let them see it on a live stream or a TV or things like that? People would tune in if they know it exists. Yep, so the idea is to and I think this is where it goes on the athletes as well, to be their own promoters on that one. I'm getting known to stir the pot at this point, but it's getting word out there for certain shows and things are talking about it. Maybe they find out a friend of a friend and they're like, oh, watch this kid. He goes to my gym, or like, I know him, or things like that. And that's what it takes. And I'm not saying myself only, it takes all of us as a community to show that each weight class, we're all freaks, but we also have to be entertainment as well to reach the level we want to reach. And we believe that we love this sport. We think it's one of the coolest things on the planet. And I think normal people that don't want to do what we do still think it's cool. I talk to people I work with, they think it's insane and super cool and like things like that. They just didn't know it existed for that small of a class. So I think just the more we can be advocates for each other, the more we can even like cause, rivalries to each other and get words out there and like have fun things like that and like get more eyes. We need eyes and we need spectacles and we need these things to happen. And that's why like PSL or Clash being on ESPN was such a huge thing. Like when I did it last year for the world record attempt, and I got so many texts. Like my friend was in a bar in Chicago. He's like, I saw you on TV. I'm like, yeah, this is what I do. And he's like, oh, and then he started following the sport, things like that. So I think we just need, and I think ADL is a great job as well doing it. I just think us as athletes need to take more pride in promoting the sport as well as ourselves and being a bigger personality in it.
I think that's super key, because I mean, you do have people who don't realize, like, we've talked about him too much and it might go to his head, but like Cam doesn't always realize how exceptional he is, or like he'll downplay himself. And a lot of athletes will do that. It'll be like, well, I'm not like CJ Pierce's level or something. And I'm like, you're still like at the top, like, and promoting that of like, I think even like you were talking about before this happened, of like promoting that you were going to be on this show and stuff, of like those small things of like kind of getting and like driving the community and stuff, because it can be easy to just like get super sucked into contest prep and then you're not talking about the shows you're doing, when in reality you need to be promoting these things and getting them out there, because the promoters can only do so much. And it's like getting your friends and family to like support people, like your shirts. Apparently you're at the top of the leaderboard selling those Chaos shirts.
Number one in America, baby, over John Hack, and
that's awesome.
I have like this much compared to his following. It's being honest, like I'm not John Hack level of followers on Instagram, and I'm not getting tens of thousands of views on all my lifts and things like that, and then getting people commenting like, oh my god, that's so awesome that you can yoke 560 pounds.
It's funny that you say that. Like, it blows my mind. Sorry to like sidetrack, but like it blows my mind like when I run across like random like social media profiles of these guys like lifting like warm-up weight, and everybody's like, you're such a beast, like you're so amazing. I'm like, I mean it is amazing in his own right, but like, do you realize there's people out there doing like 5-6 times that weight? Like I don't think they do, because like you said, I mean I think strongman specifically, for the most part, the vast majority of athletes do struggle with promoting themselves and promoting the sport, or they're not engaged enough in sharing and commenting and liking, whatever it takes. And
I think a big thing also, it could be gatekeeping as well, not in a bad way, but like we get so stuck in what we're doing. Like I'm wearing Cody Abel's shirt right now. Like, this is a good friend of mine in the 80s, and I love supporting him and things like that. We need to support each other. Like, share your friend's lift that did something really cool, and maybe someone follows them, and that's how you grow the sport more. And then you have one person watching both of you and getting invested in your story, and that's what it is. To be an athlete that people want to talk to, like, and listen to, it's about creating a story and a narrative that they can follow. And that could be involved in me helping you out, Darren, sharing one of your cool lifts that you do. So we need to be advocates for each other and understand, like, we're all in this to do cool things, but also like we like seeing cool things too.
Yeah.
So
absolutely. I like that.
It's on all of us.
I like that perspective. And I guess I've never really thought about that so much, is helping each other, right? Helping each other is kind of, I mean, what am I trying to say? I mean, it grows the sport. It gets more exposure for all of us. We're all struggling to get the exposure for the sport, for ourselves, right? For self-promotion. I mean, helping each other. Maybe that's kind of one of the hidden keys to the progress of the sport that we've not tapped into yet, because I don't think that happens by and large. I mean, yeah, here and there, like if somebody tags you, you know, yeah, you go and you share it, and kind of gets it's a little repetitious and sort of a mindless, you know, sure, I'll just put this on my stories because I have to hit 2 buttons, right? But yeah, I like that perspective. We need to do more of that. But also, you know, I want to get back to the point, John, you made about not being, you know, you use CJ Pierce level, whatever. One of the first things I learned when I travel overseas was to compete was the promoter had said something to the extent of like, you know, being strong is one thing, but to be a really great athlete, you have to be good in front of the camera. And there's a lot of truth to that, because there's a lot of people out there who get invited back to shows in Giants Live and Arnold and SCL, not because they're the best athlete, like the strongest. It's because they have great personalities and they have that story to tell that is the entertainment value that sells the show.
Yeah, and that's a huge factor. I think people, again, I grew up loving wrestling, and like I love WWE, I love all that stuff, not as much as I did as a kid. But like when I painted half my face for OSG, I got so much more exposure. People like sharing and posting and stuff like that. And it wasn't like, it still has to be you. It still has to be like a piece of you. But like that was a big chunk of who I am. So be the most outgoing version of yourself, even when you're competing. Have your celebration, do your thing, like, and it's okay to celebrate your own accomplishments on camera. It's not being like, oh, this guy's really cocky because he just like did this thing. Like, no, you earned to be cocky in that moment. You earned that because you just did the thing. You know what I mean? It's one thing to like badmouth people, but if you like back up your bullshit and earn your spot, like be the most outgoing version of yourself and show people 100%. Who you are.
Yeah.
Like it's not who I am. It's just is the most out there version of myself. Is when I compete, I am the most like I am present. I am focused on my mission, which is the show. But at the same time, like I wear jorts all the time. I wear them when I compete too. I like pro wrestling. I paint my face now for shows. It's one of those things. It's like, yeah, it's for me, but it's also like for the camera.
Right.
You know, like I'm more planning out my outfits for a show before I even go to the show. But it's gonna get the camera on me. Hell yeah, I want that camera on me. I want to look at that camera, give it a wink, and like play that game with it. I'm still gonna do my job and perform as best I can, but don't take away from that. And don't do that if that's not who you are. But like find your thing and like be a spectacle. We already lift like a spectacle. There's so many amazing personalities in this sport. We just need to show it.
Agree 100%, man.
Because it makes a huge difference sharing those things. Of like our second sponsored athlete, Chase, like had a personal best as like, I think he's a 198 on the 300-pound log and everything. And he shared it. And I was like, we reshared it. And he was like overnight, like 50 or 100 people followed him. And it's like, that's a big deal of those like extra things. And even with like other athletes, I've noticed now that Instagram finally lets more people collaborate, like those collaboration posts of like sharing each other's things and like tagging people directly makes a big deal.
And also like, don't think your accomplishments aren't worth like being celebrated. Like the same thing, like, oh, I'm not CJ Pierce. Like, no, I'm not CJ Pierce. But when I hit my first 300-pound log, hell yeah, I'm sharing that and posting about it. And I was like hype about it. You know what I mean? And to him, that's working weight. To me, now it's working weight. If you hit a PR, don't be ashamed to share it and be like, oh, I look dorky because like that guy over there is doubling what I'm doing. A PR is like just as hard to me to you. Like someone's asked me, what was it like to pull 770 pounds? I'm like, what was your max? And they're like, oh, like 420. I'm like, it felt the same way. Same thing. It's just my progression's here now. I got to feel it again and again. So, yeah. So like and athletes need to like, again, when my friends do something cool, I share it. So we need to help each other. And we also need to be okay with showing ourselves and being proud of our accomplishments along the way.
Yeah. I share all my lifts, and a lot of them are just ridiculous lifts of just like searchers. I'm branching out and stuff, but you don't always realize what people like. I think my most liked Instagram post ever was me split jerking 155 pounds off blocks. Got 25,000 views and like over 1,000 likes. I still don't know why. Like there's no music in the background. I didn't put any audio. It's just the same movement. I did it like 10 times in a row. And it's like, I've never been able to recreate it, but you never know what people like. And it's also creating that story, because it really is impressive. Like Darren was saying, like watching your progress of being able to see someone like struggle to hit 275 or 280 is now working with 300 pounds. Like it's nothing. Of like CJ Pierce watching his deadlift go up to be like, my deadlift's not the best, but here's me deadlifting 600 pounds or whatever. And you're like, oh, cool. Like that's crazy. And
it's an individual, like it's an individualist sport in a way, right? I mean, you need a good team around you and a good network, right? But when you're out competing, it's you against every other individual on the field, right? And yeah, man, and it's all relative at the end of the day. Like you said, I always kind of went out when I competed. Is like, people have kind of asked me that, like, what's your goal at this show? And like, do better than I did last show, right? Because it's really a competition against myself. Yeah, I want to win. I'm going to go to win, but like my number one goal is to improve every time. I'm out there to kind of competing against myself in a lot of ways, hitting those PRs, whatever it is, and yeah, like you said, I mean, dude, everybody wants to see you excited that you did something. It doesn't matter that it was like the heaviest weight or the most reps on the field. You just did better than you've ever done, or you hit what you wanted, or whatever it is, man. Cheer. And I kind of remember when we did the strength of feet here, I hit the 481 stone, and I was just like, I was excited, man, because like that was my first goal of the day, and I was just pumped. And I remember having He's like, is that a PR? And I'm like, no. But I'm freaking happy about it, right? No,
that video is so good.
Because I was like super excited that I loaded that in like officially. At that time that was a world record, right? We'd all hit that, and so I mean, dude, it's okay to cheer for yourself, like you said, man, and it doesn't matter what the weight is.
Yeah, and
it doesn't even have to be a PR, right?
No, it's like I said, it's an individual sport. But like at the same time, it's a community-based sport. That's the biggest thing with everything. And realistically, it's not even like with most sports, it's like, oh, you versus someone. Most events, you can't do that. You know what I mean? You have to do your best at every event. Yeah. Like I think I can name like 4 occasions ever in my whole almost 9-year time career doing this, where I could be like, okay, I can tone back a little bit, maybe not go to my best. No, 99.9% of the time, you are going to be pushing everything to your nth degree on that one. And like, if we also need to understand, like, if you get beat, shake the person's hand. Like, that's awesome. You have more motivation to go try and beat them. Like, my defining moments in my career are shows I've done poorly at. Like, those are what made me the best athlete I can be, is understanding, okay, what did I do wrong? If I did nothing wrong, what do I need to improve? It's just all those steps you have to go through. It's celebrate your accomplishments, look at everything as a learning experience, and just enjoy this sport and enjoy the community.
Yeah. Dude, that's the nice thing about the community, though. I mean, yeah, it's an individual sport, but like that, the sportsmanship and the camaraderie is one of the things that kept me in it, that actually drew me into the sport. So a lot of times, like, your biggest fans, or at least your biggest, the biggest cheerleader section sometimes is your other competitors, right? And that's what's awesome about the sport is, yeah, I mean, you're out there to do the best for yourself, but nobody, I think, at the top is out there to get an easy win. You want everybody to do their very, very best so that you beat them at their best, because then it adds a lot of value to when you win.
Yeah. I always explain the show. You explained it very well, but just to reiterate on that, I want everyone at Kaos to do their best. Every one of them.
Of course.
I want my best to beat their best, though.
Yeah.
That's what I want out of the show. Like,
100%.
If someone does make a mistake, like, that's just what happened that day, and I'll take it. I'll try to do my best to do what I can, but you can only control yourself. But again, I'm cheering for every other athlete at the show. I want them to do their best, but I want my best to beat their best, and I'm not going to make it easy for them to beat me, and I never do.
Oh, yeah, man.
So I have a funny story about that. Recently, I did a fun little comp at our local gym, Home Barbell Club. Shout out, they're great. And there was one guy who he signed up at the last minute, so we switched, and I went first and he went last. Because I love going first in events, because then I'm only trying to beat myself. Like, I'm just going to try the best and like hopefully win, but we had this like arm over arm sled drag thing. And I set a time that no one else could beat, and him and I had switched, and he was at the very end. And I'm like timing, I was helping pull the slack out, and he's going super fast, but I can tell I'm gonna beat him by like half a second or something. And I was cheering him on, and I was like, Moses, go faster. And he suddenly went faster and beat me by half a second, and I couldn't believe it. I was like, oh my God, I didn't think you'd actually go faster. He's like, no, I couldn't believe that like you were at first in this event and you're telling me to go faster and beat your time. I was like, in retrospect, maybe I shouldn't have been as cheerful, but it was a fun moment of like realizing like you want to see people at their best and stuff. Like you don't want to have an easy win. And it's like, it's the most fun way, like competing against people who are at their best and stuff. Cause like nothing sucks more than like watching someone get injured and then have to like go on with the show. And you know, you're not competing against their best version. So it's just this like,
that was my first Highland Games, man. I technically on paper, I took second to last, but the guy last got injured halfway through. So I really took last.
Those moments haunt you.
Yeah.
So, but I think that's really important of like supporting people. And I like that mindset. And I like the jorts too. We need to shout jorts. I've been on the jorts train now for several years, and it's great. And also just like reach out to people and keep up with them in the community. Cause like Darren was super awesome. And I was like, dude, this guy's amazing. He's a professional athlete. Like he's cool. And look where we are now. Like we're talking, hanging out with friends.
Maybe semi-professional.
He's semi-professional. I was like, you've traveled.
I'm not making a living off of this, but I've got paid a little bit of money. So maybe you call me a semi-professional.
I mean, we can talk about what's the line that makes you professional and what doesn't. And it's just like, you know,
I've said for a long time that to be a professional, you should be making a living. This should be your profession, right? That's the dictionary definition of professional, making a living at your profession. But in a sport that can't really pay anybody that, then I guess we have to blur the lines a little bit.
I started defining it as if you had to claim it on your taxes, then you made enough to be called a professional, at least for that year.
I've been writing off all my expenses for the last 3 years.
So maybe you are.
If people don't know that you can do that, like you told, like so the IRS can as an athlete, you can be a business entity, right? You use your social security number instead of a whatever
employee ID number or whatever.
Employee ID. And they'll allow you to write off your expenses up for up to 3 years without making any profit. But after that, like technically there's like, you're supposed to stop doing it. I don't know what happens if you don't, but you're just claiming a loss, right? More or less.
Yeah. There's little hack for people out there that are starting to climb that ladder where travel and all the gear we have to have, like the different shoes, the different sleeves, the different. And it just adds, like I just spent $275 on some of the sandbags we're going to use at Chaos. Ordered them from the UK. Yeah. So I ordered 2 of them, and that's not even counting what I have to fill them with. So like, you better believe I'm writing that off. So
we don't even want to start on how much money I've spent on this.
That's
over the 14 and a half years that I competed in it.
I don't want to calculate all of it. I spent that today. That's why I know what the number is.
I have a rough guess. I've estimated, and it's 6 figures. It's not good. So like, really, if you want to talk about professionals, semi-professional status, I mean, the reality is I'm so far in the hole, man. I'm still at level 0.
Yeah, but
at least the sandbags you got are good though.
They're gonna be great. I'm so excited
because those worm sandbags, I'm not a fan of that. I just want to take a brief moment to say the worm drag, those long $800 sandbags, not a fan.
Well, I was gonna order from Rogue, but Rogue sandbags, the Hustafel versions, they only go up to 200 pounds. And we're doing a 330, so we had to order the ones that they're exactly using. And luckily, they gave me a good deal on it and like shaved off some prices. Then I had to pay the shipment to the US. But that's the only way they made them big enough to hold be a sandbag Hustafel in there. Because like I said, Rogue only goes to 200. I'm like, well, I can't train with a 200 bag for a 330 carry. That's not going to help me at all.
Just dump some lead shot in there. You'll be fine.
That's
what I did with my throwbacks, like to bring them up to like the fill them with rubber, and then I added lead shot to bring them up to weight, so they're nice and full. And because I hate the sloppy sit, even though that's what they make us use sometimes. But
I feel like throw bags are different though, because like a carry, it'll be all weighted in the bottom, for a max distance. So it's like
the bag to shoulder I did for the OSG qualifier. That's how I took my 300 303 bag and put bags of lead on top of it. I mean, it was like jammed. I mean, it was like there was like no room
up top.
If I would have dropped it, it would have just gone everywhere, right? But like that's why, if you watch the video, I'm bringing it down like as slowly as possible because I know if I drop this, like there's lead going.
Well, that must have made it easier to clean then, because all the weight's up top, it flips with you. So that's something people like.
I mean, it was a little. I don't know if it made it easier necessarily, but
I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm saying like using the physics to your advantage. Like it was
a shorter bag, right? I think a taller bag would have been easier to clean.
Yeah.
Because you have more higher to start with, but I don't know. I don't know that it made it. I don't know. That's a good point. I never thought about it. I mean,
like the shout out Shane, who posted it after OSG. He posted how he was training his athletes to stand by the shoulder. He had them pull it down so the weight's in the bottom. So when they flipped it, it went all the way up. And I'm like, oh. Why didn't I think of that? And it made me like hit a 300 bag out of nowhere. I'm like, cool, this is great, awesome. I didn't, because it just using the physics to your advantage is more weight to flip with you than against you. Because when most people push it, the weight's sinking underneath you, so you're holding all the weight down here. So little things like that. I'm just like a giant physics nerd with this sport. I think you have to be to get
a little.
Yeah.
But,
that's how you get the edges.
Did the guy the 105s that got the heaviest sandbag to shoulder for that qualifier? I think he used like a 250 pound bag, so it was really small and easy to get a hold of, and he just loaded it with lead shot, man. And it was like 400 and some pounds. Like it was like four. I think it was already.
I think that must have been packed.
It was tight. Super packed. It was super packed. I think he duct taped it on top just to make sure to like blow up.
Boom. Everyone likes the tight bag. No one likes the sloshy bag.
Oh, dude, the sloppy. So the difference between my 300, when I had that like loaded up to 380, that was easier because it was tight than my 320 or 330, maybe it is, because it's sloppy. Like that thing's impossible. Like I can't shoulder that thing to save my life. Well, I have, but it's so hard.
It doesn't make it easier for you. Yeah, that's the nuances of the sport we talk about. Like we know the difference between if we see a sloppy bag or a lighter bag, how we manipulate it. Like it's not just weight; it's weight plus physics plus different nuances.
Yep.
So
indeed. But hey guys, we're getting up to almost an hour and 15 minutes. We like to keep it about an hour, so.
You can cut this last bit, I guess. This is just us.
No, we won't cut it. We're just, we should probably
have started recording earlier. That's really the lesson we need to learn. Because every time
we need to get on and just hit record, like ASAP.
And just start talking.
Get it all. Yeah.
Joe Rogan style, where they're in the middle of a conversation already. You're just like,
I mean, clearly,
surprise record.
Clearly that's working for you. So
yeah.
Any closing thoughts, CJ? I mean, anything you want our viewers to know, where to find you, anything along those lines?
So you can find me on Instagram. It's gonna be at Giant Slayer Krause, underscores in between. Again, you'll see my OSG picture with the face paint and all of that. The biggest thing I'm looking forward to, I just want to bring it up, is obviously the Kaos Classic, but also working with PSL for the U64 women, be on commentary with you, Darren. Those are the two big things I want to highlight on this episode before we get out of here. I'm excited to hopefully grow the sport more over the next year, 2 years, 5 years, whatever it is. So, yep.
Amen to that.
Yeah. And if you check their website, you'll get to see a familiar logo. So that's a real handy thing.
He's helping build the website. I don't know. Are you building it or are you?
I'm just making it look nice. It's with GoDaddy, which Tyler actually got to watch me work. And that's one of those things of like having someone watch you do your job. It's always exciting. But Tyler's great. And it was wonderful having you on the show. And I love how many athletes you shouted out, because like Kim Scott, Ethan, CJ Pierce, all great people.
Yeah, so I have nothing bad to say about those people. So, the more I can, again, promote other athletes, including myself, the better it is for the sport, like I talked about. So,
I was so glad when you wanted to do this. So, it was really great. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Thanks for coming, man.
Support us on Patreon or Anchor, and find us on Instagram or Facebook.